All right. Howdy. Welcome to the show. Bobby,
Howdy.
this is like we're both this is like new haircut day for both of us. I think yours is a little more
Yes.
drastic though.
Yeah, mine's more aerodynamic, and
It's true. Are
more
you faster?
cooling.
Have you tested this?
We played golf. I played golf on Sunday and I felt like my swing was a little bit different because it did seem like my head was moving through the air like just slightly faster, so the timing was a little
Yeah.
jacked up. I will tell you though, man, I don't get hot anymore, which is very interesting. Like I feel like I haven't sweat once, and usually because like how we've talked about this on the podcast, like our house is hot. Like my wife keeps
Yeah.
it cranked. I feel very comfortable now. In fact, kind of cold sometimes. So
Interesting. Well, it's supposedly like a lot of your heat transfers in your head.
yeah,
Like that's like if the kids are coming out of the shower, like they'll, oh, I'm cold. Then you just dry their hair and then they're like, fine.
yeah.
So maybe that has something to do with it. Interesting.
I think we could do an opposite thing where I shape my beard to be the same way as your hair currently, and then like I've got to grow it quite a bit. But I think that'd be kind of funny, you know.
That would be funny. Dude, I went yesterday to the barbershop and I had like the long hair going and I was joking. Well, I told you this, but like I was in the car with the kids and we listen to music as loud as it'll go in the car, which is why they like riding with daddy more than mommy. Um, but they were at a stop sign and they were dancing and like Cooper was like headbanging. And so I started doing that and my hair was just like going everywhere. And the kids laughed so freaking hard. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But I felt like I lost 10 pounds yesterday. Like,
But dude, yeah, when I cut my hair off, because I had long hair and I cut it off, and it was a lot of hair that came off, and it was a very shocking experience. I've gotten over it. Like, I think it's been 2 weeks now, so I'm very used to it. There was like probably 3 days where every time I saw myself, because what's weird about it is you still feel like you have hair when you shave your head.
okay.
Like I don't know, like if you're just kind of like, how like you have clothes on and you kind of forget that you have clothes on, like you can't
Sure.
feel them anymore when you're just like sitting still for a long time. It's the same thing
Yeah.
with your head. And so like I would look at the mirror and be like, whoa, who's that? And then that wore off after about 3 days. But now every single person that I haven't seen yet since I've done it, like they have like an experience. Like
It's
they have
shocking.
like
Yeah.
my mother-in-law, I saw my mother-in-law for the first time yesterday and she was just like, oh my God, but it was funny too.
You
Um,
look, I told Katie because she hasn't seen it yet. And I was like, Bobby looks like he could beat the crap out of somebody with a crowbar right now.
I feel like I could.
Like that would be a natural state.
The problem is like I have no fighting skills, but now I'm kind of like people might expect that, so I should get into like BJJ or whatever. Like
Is
I should
that
get
a,
into
is that a
something.
is that a detriment now where people aren't going to mess with you, or is it now they're going to like be like, oh, let's challenge this guy?
I don't know. I haven't seen enough people. I've gotten that comment a lot. Like you look tough now, which is interesting. But I haven't been around.
You looked like a
against
dad
enough people.
beforehand. Now you look like a biker.
Yeah, I feel like a biker. I might get a bike. I don't know. I might just do whatever. I might just
Dude,
lean into
motorcycle's
all the
fun.
stereotypes. But yeah,
They're fun, man.
um,
Cool. So I have a story for you because this kind of blew my mind yesterday. So going to basketball with Cooper for his last practice, and we're driving down the hill, and I go, Cooper, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I just ask him this from time to time because you just never know what these kids are going to say. And usually they just kind of blow you off. Or Mason goes in space cadet mode and he wants to be Power Ranger or something, So Cooper goes, I want to open a Lego store. And so to give you some context for this, one of my law school buddies, a few years after getting into practice, opened a Lego store in Fort Worth. And so you can go in there and you can just build things. They have these massive tables, and obviously you can buy sets and things, but like, Cooper, it's like a core memory or something, I guess, because he went in there. And so they have like, you can build a custom minifigure and they have like all these pieces and give it whatever weapons or helmets, whatever you want. And so Cooper made his own guy, like he let him do it for free. And then he played and all this stuff. So he had that in his mind. He goes, I want to open a store like that for like in this area, because we don't have anything like that. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. He's like, but I want to make it better. It's like, oh, okay. Well, how do you want to make it better? And so he goes, well, people will have parties at this place because they do there, right? And they can build Legos. And he goes, But so I want to take the Lego place and Kid Mania, which is basically like leaps and bounds back in the day. You remember we had that, where it's just like the tunnels and all that. He goes, I want to have Kid Mania in the Lego store. And so when you go to the other part, but all the tunnels and things are all designed to look like Legos. So it looks like you're a Lego person going through all these things.
That's cool.
I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a cool idea. But what was interesting about it, so he came up with he took two things he knew and how they would fit together, which I thought was pretty cool. But then throughout the night, he kept thinking about it and he kept coming to me with different things he needed to figure out. And so the first one was like, the big thing I'm going to have to figure out is like, how do we get the word out? Like, how do we get people to come in and buy? It's like, okay, interesting. And then he went on to like logo and name for the place and all this kind of stuff. And then on the way home, he's like, I'm going to have a building and I got to build these things and I got to get all the Legos, that's going to take a lot of money. So I got to figure out, how do I get the money for this? And it's like, well, you could get a loan, you could get an investor. So then he started talking about like, the people that could potentially invest in this business. But he just kept going with it, man. Even like last night before bed, I'm tucking him in and he's like, I've been thinking more about this, getting the word out. He goes, and I was like, yeah, so that's called marketing. He goes, yeah, I don't know how it really works. Like, I'm not really sure, but maybe you and mom can like post about my business on Instagram or something, and that will attract people to the business. So to me, like, I thought that was really cool that you've got this kid that's 7, about to be 8. And he's sitting here like figuring out, what do I need for this business? And then to take a step further, he wants to sit down and essentially he wants to write a business plan.
Right.
Like he wants to sit down and like map it all out and like put all his ideas and like how he's going to do it. I'm just like, man, this is really cool. Like I wasn't really, we've talked about before, do we want the kids to be entrepreneurs or not? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I just want them to do whatever they want. But when he's talking about that, I was like, man, okay, this kid is way smarter than I was at 8 years old. And sure, it's really cool to see him thinking like that and taking something that he likes, but like figuring out how can I make it work. So anyway, I thought that was pretty damn cool.
No, it is cool. I've actually, we were having this in the other business, we were having this conversation the other day about like, what would you do if your kid came to you with like some kind of crazy idea not crazy idea, but like wanted to do something that was something you didn't want them to do? Like the example we were doing a podcast about, our web developer does hot dog eating contests, he does food competitions and he does them for money, but like there's professional, like you've seen them, like the Nathan's hot dog people.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember the names of the people, but there's like a few of the top tier people are multimillionaires. Like they've got, you can see their net worth, like they make a lot of money for these competitions. And we were talking about like, what if your kid came to you and wanted to be a professional eater? Like what would you say to your kid at that moment? And I don't know, like I guess my personality is more like and kind of similar to what you said. Like I want my kid to do, I think I want them to do whatever they want, but so long as they don't have to live a difficult life, I think. Because like there's a lot of things like you can just like follow your passions and there's no money in it. And then it's like a hard, difficult life, but not in like a hard, like you're building something kind of like difficult. You're striving for something just like that kind of like positive. Yeah. Just like not making enough money to live or like barely scraping by is not a fun way to live. It's just it's not a good way. So I don't want that for my kid, but I do want him to do something he really enjoys. So I don't know It's like if he comes to me one day and he's like, I want to be an artist, or I want to be something like that, where I know it's like, oh, that's going to be a tough road. I don't know how I'm going to react in that moment. Cause I think how you react, it's like a big deal. Like if you react the wrong way, you can really shape your kid's future in that moment,
Yeah. I've thought about that a lot too. It's interesting because I think part of me is like, I'd say like, okay, give it a shot for a year. See how far you get. See if you actually want to do that. See if you actually have the discipline to like start getting traction.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be part of it. But on the flip side, it's interesting too, because one of the things I was thinking about yesterday is he was talking about this stuff. It's like, okay, if Cooper did want to go into a business, like, like part of me would be like, yeah, I'd rather you have money to go try and do that, than just blow it on, an overpriced university. But the flip side of that, because like, I had $200,000 student debt coming out, but the flip side of that is like, I would really want my kids to go to college, but not because like, I think it's a good value for the money, but I do think it gives you options. And I had an incredible experience. Like, I really feel like going to A&M, which is probably overpriced, like all big universities, like that was one of the best decisions I made in my life. So, and I don't necessarily use my degree, but it's, the network and everything. So to me, I think I would either be like, hey, try it for a year, or why don't you do this while you're at college? Like, you have time. Like, you have so much free time when you're in college. Like, you don't think you do, but like you do. So
dude, I played a lot of Mario Kart in college.
Yeah,
I
sure.
played like a lot of video games and a lot of just because I went to U of H for a year, University of Houston, for a year. And like TJ, who we went to school with, he was in the saxophone section with you in band. He was my roommate, and we used to drink so much beer, and we would make like beer pyramids. Hopefully my mom's not listening to this, because I don't think I was 21, but we would make these we would just make these beer pyramids in our room, like just so many empty beer cans. And we would like do it over the course of like a week, where we would like stack them all up and like really take it very seriously. And then we would play video games. And I think like, how much time did I spend doing that instead of something that was like remotely valuable at all, But then I'm like, wow, it's kind of fun though. So maybe there's that, maybe there's something to that too. Like,
well, and I think you could have both. Like, I got a buddy, Jacob, who is an agency owner, and we were in the Corps together at A&M. There was, all of us lived in the same spot. So he wasn't my roommate, but he lived like right next door. And I just think of like all the time that we spent on a whiteboard, like mapping out biology nonsense that neither one of us used in our degree, and we both are like, what if we had been learning about funnels? What if we'd been doing what we do today and we started it then, like how far along would we be just from that, like the time aspect, so you could do that. And I think you could do that and still have fun. Like, so, but anyway, it's an interesting question, because like, I think about that a lot, man, because like the things that you say to your kids, it has such a big impact. And like, I think a lot about like when I react a certain way, I go, oh, that is not how I want to react in this situation, and so that's really hard. But so I think about that a lot, but it's interesting. Like, we have a lot of educators in our family, and like the mindset with Cooper, at least, is like, he's like, I'm not going to be a teacher, because he's already kind of absorbed that from everybody of like, I'm going to work and like not make enough money. And so I think that is one thing. Like, I would actually steer my kids away from like if they're going to college and getting a very expensive degree for something that does not pay well or doesn't have a career coming out of it. Whereas like if they were more entrepreneurial, like I'd be like, well, hey, go get a business degree and like learn something useful and start building now. Don't wait till you get out. Don't go work for some company, but like start doing whatever. But if they wanted to like go, I think I've told you before, like Mason, I just have this feeling because of his personality and how creative he is and how kind of introspective he is in a way. Like, I'm like, I could see him just like setting up like a carpenter shop in a small town, And so like, if he came to me and wanted to do something like that, I would be like, yeah, how can I help? Like, let's do it. So I think it probably does depend, like the hot dog thing. Like, I don't know. That's a little out there, but I think I would be like, hey, if you want to go for it, like go for it. But if you're really that passionate about it, like you will make the time for it and make it work while still finding a way to support yourself and pay your bills. And like, that's the direction I would want him to go. But I think that's also kind of key. Like, if you go all in on it, like it's hard to have that discipline. People don't realize that when you work for yourself, when you work from home, like discipline's the hardest thing.
Oh, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to like really be into what you're doing a lot of ways and really want it to have that discipline. And a great way to find out if you really want it is like, do you make time for it when you don't have a lot of time? So I don't know. I feel like that's the route I would suggest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I remember when I told my parents that I was going to, this is like, I can't even imagine being them, because it was like, came out of left field when I told them I wanted to be a blogger, which is such a weird, like, it was, I had, I had already been a teacher for 3 years, and I've been considering making this jump. And I really felt like I needed to kind of like ask their permission in a way, just because
yeah,
they had helped me get through college. I mean, I had student loans and all that, but like they helped a ton. And it really, like, I wouldn't have gone to college, I don't think, if they hadn't done all the things that they did. And so I felt like I was like wasting their effort and money and stuff like that. So I went to my parents' house, and we were like just hanging out. I think we were just like drinking beers or something we barbecued or something. But like, I just sat down and I told them, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I started this blog, and I want to quit my job and do it full time. And I remember my mom's reaction was like, no. Like, she basically just said, that's a terrible, like, I can't remember how she said it. I just remember her being really worried about it. Like, just being like, that's a terrible idea. Don't
scared,
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was scared, but my dad's reaction was awesome. And I hope it's the way that I react whenever Micah tells me whatever he tells me. He was just like, that's awesome. You should totally do it. Like, it was just, like, he had no fears, concerns, doubts about it. He was just like, that sounds awesome. And he's like, do you believe in it? Like, do you think you can make it? And I was like, yeah. He was like, you should do it. So, that made it so much easier to actually, not that you need your parents' permission to do something, but it made it, I didn't feel guilty, going into it. Like, I was just like, okay, now I can just like really focus on this. And then I found out you don't make money blogging for a very long time.
I didn't have
reality.
a moment like that, because I didn't really have this, like, time where I was like, hey, everybody, this is what I'm doing. Like, it just kind of like happened organically, because even I had the business in law school, and then I got out and I was working, for the oil company. And so like when I kind of started putting more effort into the business, when Cooper got sick, like the only thing that really happened was I stopped going through the process of applying for like these bigger firm jobs, and so, I remember my dad, was like, hey, are you, or maybe it was after I had stopped, I had left that job. I remember at one point my dad was like, are you looking for part-time work as an attorney? And I was like, there's no such thing as part-time attorney work. And
is it really? See, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was no such thing.
Not that I know of. Like, there might be, but it was like, that's not what they want. They want a young, if you're a young attorney and you're like still learning, they want you to come in and like grind. And so that was what I was telling him. I was like, there's no such thing as that. Maybe that's wrong. But I guess maybe I had left the oil company because he was bringing that up, but I don't remember them having any reaction. The reaction was like, when I finally got fed up with him asking me that like once or twice a week. And I basically was just like, here's how much money I'm making right now. And it was like way more than he was expecting. And then he was like, oh, okay. But they weren't like not supportive about it or anything. It was just, that nervousness. And then like my dad coming, being an engineer and like always knowing he wanted to be an engineer. And whereas like me, where I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, it just like didn't compute with him. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't have that moment, but I also like, I didn't have like, my student loans were all in my name. Like I didn't feel any like guilt about that. I was just like, I got to own this. I got to pay this off. I got to figure it out. And then Katie was like super supportive about it always. So like almost kind of surprisingly so, because she was kind of floating the bill for a while,
Well, yeah, Coral was too. Coral didn't have any, like, she was just like, yeah, you should do it. Because we were going to go down. We went down to her teaching salary. We weren't even married yet. I think we were about to get married. I can't believe all that stuff. I'd look back on that. I'm like, geez, man, I wonder if I'll have a moment in my life again like that, where like I do some like just wild life decision. Cause like, that was the thing. It was like, very quickly, it was like, between the time that I decided to quit to when I actually walked in and quit, it was less than 48 hours. It was really, really fast. It was just like, I felt like I wanted to do something. I had a conversation with a friend And I remember texting him. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot. It was like after work one day.
Mhm.
And I was telling him like, dude, if I just do one more year and I save up this much money, then I'll finally, I'll be able to quit and like start my own thing. And he's just like, dude, you need to do it now. Just do it now. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then I went that night and I talked to Coral about it. And we were still living at her parents' house. We were renting a room from them.
Mhm.
And I told my mother-in-law that I was going to do it. And she was just, you could tell she was like, this is a terrible idea. Because I was about to get married to her
Right.
daughter. So I'm
Right.
sure that they were like, wow, okay, this is scrub. But I remember her dad I don't remember his reaction. He might have thought it was a bad idea. Maybe not. He was kind of like a free spirit kind of dude. So he was pretty
Yeah.
open to things, but it was like that. And then I think the next day I talked to my parents, and then I think that maybe the morning after that, or maybe, I don't know. I remember when I quit though, it was freaking awesome. Cause I didn't really quit. Like, it wasn't like I just like quit and then walked out for good. It was like, I quit and I had like
2 weeks.
I think we had a month of school.
Yeah.
I think it was
okay.
a full month left, which was the best month ever. Like that month I went in, I told my boss about it. And I remember he was shocked because it was like just him and I left in the band hall. And I was like, hey man,
wasn't he like telling you like how bad of an idea it was like the rest of that?
Not initially,
Okay.
but eventually. Yeah. But he like, so I told him and he was just like, what, you're going to do what? Like, and I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this website thing. And then I remember we walked out together to our cars, and it was like the most awkward walk, like leaving the building together, like in silence. Cause I had just quit. Cause like for him, he had to go find a new director, and like, it's a pain in the ass for
Yeah,
him,
sure.
And the kids, it's like when you have a teacher and you got the kids, they know a teacher, it was a big transition for him. But then for the next month, man, it was like, I didn't have to go to any meetings. I didn't have to like everything. Like I was in the room. They were interviewing for my position while I was still working. And so like they were doing interviews in the room next to my office.
And you were like, yeah,
it was awesome. But they would come in and talk to me about it. Like, hey, what do you think about this guy? And what do you think about this person? But it was just the most fun. It was like the most fun I had at work. Cause it was like, there was no like stress. It was like it had this weight lifted off my shoulders. And I just like, that was the only time I really enjoyed going to work, when I knew that I didn't have to do anything
like
that anybody told me to do.
All the day-to-day BS that comes with education, that like you don't have to like, oh, this doesn't matter now.
It doesn't matter. Like, what are you going to say to me? And I still taught, like, but at the end of the year, especially in the band world, like things really wind down. So like,
right.
You're kind of just, you and the kids are kind of just counting it down until summer.
Right.
And so it's just like, I was getting paid to just go there and like have fun. And it was awesome. That was a good time.
It's funny, man. Like when you talk about like the start of your business, like you have these like very vivid memories of like how things went down. And like, I don't have that. Like, I don't know the date that I really started. I don't know. Like, I know the year. I know, cause I knew what year of law school I was in, but like, I don't know the date. I don't remember certain stories. Like, you're talking about like telling your parents, I don't have that. Yeah. But I
think
don't
my
know.
brain's just weird. Like my brain just kind of works like that. Well, I mean, like I see, and it's how I write emails. Like most of my emails are story based, but it's just like I'm not very observant about anything in my life. Like I miss a lot of stuff. And like we even have this thing that is really sad, that like Micah, if he called, like if I'm sitting there and I'm like on my phone or I'm working or whatever, and he calls my name, like Coral has trained him to like walk up to me and touch me on the knee and say, "Hey daddy, I have a question." And then I'm like, funny. Oh, my kid's right in front of me. So like, that's how oblivious I am to things, except for like moments in my life. They like become like, I see them as stories in my brain. So then I just take that and I write about it. So like, that's, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's
I'm like that too. Like I can't remember stuff that happened this week, but I can remember stuff like very vividly from the past. I just don't have that with the start of the business. I don't know if that's just like because of how mine started. Like it was just such a long, like slow roll into it maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. It could be that.
It's funny though. You mentioned about like the awkward conversations with the parents and like, right before when y'all were engaged, right before you got married, making that decision. I don't have that, but I do remember it being very awkward when I talked to Katie's parents about proposing to her, because I'd made the decision to go to law school. And so I basically, like, the joke was, I was like, hey, I'd like to ask your daughter to be my sugar mama, like, and basically us to get married and her to pay the bills for 3 years, And so I remember that being kind of an awkward thing, but I just showed up with beer and we all got drunk and it was great. But I do remember like, this is going to be a really weird conversation because I'm not like going to be providing for her at first. So I don't have that moment like you did, but I remember that moment being an awkward.
Well, it's just because I think it's just because I made a distinct choice in a very short period of time to do that. And it was just one of those things. It was just most people were like, what are you doing? It was very similar to me. It's actually shockingly, going back to the beginning of this, shockingly similar to like shaving your head. You make a decision that most people are like, wouldn't do. Like most people would not just do something like that.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that. And so I think any time in life where you do something that's like kind of shocking to people or kind of like, I don't know, like quitting your job to become an entrepreneur, that's like an unsafe, weird thing to do. I think it's like makes a big impact on people.
It's a very entrepreneur thing to do though. Like most people will weigh the pros and cons and they'll think about it for a long time and they'll ask all their friends and like try to get other people's support and validation of what they're thinking about and everything. And entrepreneurs just kind of go, this feels right. I'm going to do it, which you kind of got to have a little bit because most people will think that what you're doing is shocking or weird and you won't get that validation because it'll be uncomfortable to them. Like, oh, and that's how people are like, oh, I couldn't do that or I wouldn't do that. So you shouldn't do that, So that's probably part of why this has worked for you because you just shave your head or quit your job within 48 hours of
you just make decisions, man. And then you watch everybody else freak out and you observe it. It's very interesting.
I'm very curious, like what you would look like without the beard now.
That's probably not going to happen at any point. I've got a good beard. I've
you do
out in some ways. Yeah.
It's
but you know what's interesting? I don't know if we need to make this a shaved head podcast, but it is what most people want to talk about. I learned actually this goes into, we could probably I don't want to turn this into another podcast. I learned that, how Gary Vee talks about the people that are hurting the most, like, how does he phrase this? Like online interactions, the people that are hurting the most are the people that are like leave hate comments and things like that.
Sure.
I've very quickly found out because like shaving your head, like a lot of guys are balding and like, they don't want to like talk about it or they try to hide it or whatever. The people that like joke about it the most seem to be so far the most self-conscious about themselves. And it's a very interesting thing. Like, I was playing golf the other day and it was like, three of the guys I was hanging out with, one of them is this is going to sound a little weird, but he's a very good looking guy, full head of hair. Like he was like, he's a good looking guy and didn't say anything about it. He's just like, yeah, dude, looks good. One of the other guys that I play golf with, really good friend, he's losing quite a bit of hair. He was like loud about it and like constant, like every time we saw somebody, he's like, look what Bobby did. Check this out. And we talked about it later and he's like super self-conscious about his hair. Like he's like really like, and I think that it in that moment, I kind of realized like, man, this is very similar to like online stuff because he probably was like pointing it out and saying things and joking about it. It was all in good fun, but it was like, it's a diversion of like, don't look at me, look at this person, and it's a very interesting thing that people do that, and
that wasn't even the first thing I thought of when you were saying this was like, what if he's pointing it out to see how everybody reacts to it?
It could be
because he's like, I'm going to have to do that eventually. Like, is this going to be, are they going to be positive about it? Whatever it was, whatever the reason was, he probably didn't realize,
No. It was just, but that was why my brain goes into like observation mode. Like, why is this happening? Why do people do this? And I was just noticing like just the different reactions to people is like the more bald the guy was going, the more they joked about it. But it was like, it was just very interesting. I don't know. I talked to Robert about it because Robert shaves his head and he kind of noticed some similar things too. It's like, man, people are so interesting, so weird, myself included, but it's just, but it's just interesting seeing people, how they react to things. So, but I think it goes to like online stuff. Like, I I don't know. I mean, with your YouTube stuff that you're doing now, I don't know if you get any comments about anything. I feel like in the online business space, it's maybe a little bit different than if you were
No.
like
You get
it's
random
the same.
comments about all kinds of stuff. I think the biggest thing that I've seen comments about is like people that are just like, this is BS, or that's not possible, that kind of thing. I think that's a big one. Like it's as soon, especially like if you're in any way talking about numbers, like if I talk about our course numbers, or talk about the business, like earning potential, like that kind of stuff, like when you're trying to explain to people, and as soon as like you say anything that approaches or goes beyond like that 6-figure range, people are like, this is total BS. That's not possible. Get a real freaking job. And it's like, okay. Yeah.
Well, that one makes a little bit of sense to me. I don't know. I could see, like, I can't imagine like sitting there and like typing something and sending that off to an influencer, but you also see a lot of that stuff in the online space.
Well,
where it's like 20-year-old kids talking about that stuff,
We had one on a YouTube short. And it was like, we were having the conversation about Coral doing the sponsorships and stuff, and just the way that one was clipped and like how you were talking about it, like that got a lot of negativity. But it was like about, I didn't even see that. I say a lot. It was like 3 or 4 comments, like
that's enough.
But for like kind of new content that's not, we don't have like a ton of engagement on that right now. It was a lot. But it was around things of like, like, what is this supposed to be, a humble brag? Like, you think you're cool with your big sponsorships? Like they're talking, like stuff like that, or like,
yes, I do.
Or things where it was like, oh, so like normal interview negotiations that people do every day, your wife has to figure that out. Like, it was just stuff like that. And
okay. That's interesting. I should go read those and respond to it.
And Who Hurt You? Dude, I love the
Who Hurt You is the best one, man. That one cuts right to the core, because that person got hurt somewhere.
Yeah. It's funny, man. It's funny. I with my stuff, my gut reaction is to make a snarky comment or go to battle. Like that's my personality.
I like going to battle too.
But the way I look at it is like, one, is that worth my time? And it's not. Like, is it worth me going to battle with somebody I've never seen that I'm not going to change their mind, versus hanging out with my kids? And then the second thing is like the broken window theory, right? So, when you talk about like in a neighborhood or a community, and if you have like broken windows and graffiti and things like that, like when you have more of that, then it's like, okay, this is acceptable and it can get worse. But like, if you clean it up, if you replace those windows and everything, it's a detriment to crime. Like, like that's, I remember learning about this and like doing like political science classes and stuff. And so that's kind of like my view with content is, and I learned this with ads, right? If you allow a really negative comment to stick around on an ad, people will pile on because it gives them confidence. Oh, it's acceptable for me to do this. Other people agree with me, and it can spiral out of control. And so that's kind of my approach to like posting on YouTube and on TikTok, is I'm like, this isn't worth my time. And if somebody is going to, if somebody has like a solid opposing opinion, I am totally game with that. But if you're just going to come on and just crap on it, then you're hurting there's always both ends. Like, and I think that like I have more engagement on TikTok than YouTube right now. And so there's always 2 sides and you see both. And so if you're going to come on and you're going to just be completely negative or whatever, then I'm just going to delete it. Like, I'm not even going to respond to it. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to block you, because my stuff's not for you anyway. And I don't want you to ruin the experience for somebody else. And, it adds engagement. Sure. It like that can help, but it's just not, it's not worth it. So that's kind of like my view on it. But yeah, you get things from like comments about, how you look and like, that you're full of it, or just, your mom probably didn't love you. Like, I mean, you just get the most random, you get the most random stuff. But the funny ones
I think it's fun for people. I think they enjoy it. Like, I think it's like a bored thing. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know,
I've never done it.
I always liked,
I've never sat down and done that before.
I haven't either, but I always liked like Clay Travis,
Mhm.
he'll, when somebody comes at him from Outkick the Coverage, someone will come at him on Twitter and he just clicks on their profile and looks at their posts and looks at their stuff. And if there's anything for him to make fun of, like he goes back at him. And so he'll be like, someone will say something to him, and then he'll be like, hey, neckbeard, like figure out your own issues before you come at me, like it's just, so I always get a kick out of that. And like, I think that's like that's my gut reaction. But then I'm just like, the effort's not worth it.
Yeah. It's, you know what? I've been watching a lot of Joe Rogan clips for whatever reason. They show up in my feed, but he talks a lot about, like, he just doesn't read the YouTube comments, which I can't even imagine. He gets like an unbelievable number of,
Sure.
I mean, he's the biggest podcaster in the world. So like he gets a crazy amount, but he always tells his guests, like, don't look at him. But then I know, like, he had Jordan Peterson on, and Jordan Peterson like reads every single one of them, and like it like actually affects him, and he like emotionally affects him, and he gets very upset, and he goes back and forth with people. And Joe's like, don't do that. Like, and I kind of like, I'm kind of the de facto social media manager in the other company right now. So like I have to read stuff, but like the thing you were talking about with Coral, like where it's like she's got to negotiate sponsor. I don't remember what I said in that. I could see people being like, that's a humble brag, whatever, and saying something about that. But on the flip side, like we also, in the other company, we did some content about food, like what is American food, like just what entails American food. And that pissed people off. And people are like, you don't know what you like. I can't remember what it said. It was like, oh, look at all these idiots. They don't know what American food is or whatever. And like people got pissed off about the food thing. So I don't even think it matters what kind of content you do.
That is a good question though. Like, what is American food? Like burgers and chicken tenders, chicken wings, maybe?
I think we determined that it was like burgers. Honestly, I think we just do like a lot of other people's food. Like I've heard that our Italian food isn't like real Italian food. It's
sure,
like,
we just like Americanize it, like Tex-Mex.
We just
Tex-Mex is not
Americanize it, make the portions big. Yeah. But I think burgers, though, that was one of the big things. Like burgers were actually invented in America, but a lot of people think that it was made in like Hamburger, Germany. And there's like, if you Google it, I went down this rabbit hole of like Googling, figure it out, because somebody told me I was wrong. But so, yeah, I think like burgers and I don't know, hot dogs and wings and barbecue. Somebody got pissed that we didn't say barbecue, but that's what I'm saying. It's like people like get I didn't even think about barbecue. Mad about that. I know. I didn't either.
Yeah.
But somebody sat down and got mad about that. Not really mad, but like they got enough to where they were going to like, I'm going to leave some comment and call these people idiots.
That's over so nothing. I saw a thing the other day and it was like, my kids, I'm so proud of them. They have such diverse appetites. They'll eat chicken nuggets at Chili's. They'll eat chicken nuggets at the Mexican food restaurant. They'll eat chicken nuggets at the Chinese restaurant. Like,
hey, nuggies do go hard.
Yeah, man. All right. So I think this is a good episode. I think we're kind of wound down here. We've talked about haircuts, whether we're going to support our kids or not, which we are.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think so.
And then some business stuff.
And chicken nuggies.
Yep. So thank you for joining the show. Appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. We got daily stuff every day on YouTube, so you're going to want to check that out. You can see people taking out of context clips and throwing hate comments. You can join in on that if you want. It's cool. We'll block you. But if you're not going to be like that, please subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.